Have you seen the recent research on reading and reading levels amongst our students? They're not good. Students are struggling with reading across the country. There's a variety of reasons for that, but it underscores the importance of building reading skills with our students, of explicitly teaching students how to read and helping them get better at reading. Let's look at 3 ways that we can build fluency into our instruction. Fluency is a critical aspect of becoming a strong reader. There are 3 key aspects to fluency: accuracy, rate, and prosody. Accuracy is, just as it sounds, reading accurately, being able to read the words in a text accurately and seeing what those words are. Rate is how quickly or slowly we read. Now, students should read at about the rate that they speak. We don't want students to rush through a text and read as quickly as they can. Similarly, we don't want them to read so slowly that they then can't understand what the text says. Prosody is adding in intonation, pauses, making the reading sound natural, just as we would when we're speaking. We can have students practice these aspects of fluency in the classroom. The way to do that is to build opportunities for students to read texts multiple times. And so we have 3 different ways that we can build in repeated reading and fluency building through our instruction. The first is to use poems, songs, and chants. These can be built into instruction whole group, where at any time of the day, we pause and have students stand up and join us in the space in the room where we have one of these poems or songs or chants posted. We then read that poem, song, or chant together. Choral reading is an effective way to build fluency with students. This way, all of your students are practicing reading at the same time. When it's a poem that rhymes, or when it is a song that has a melody to it, it provides students with a different modality. They're practicing reading that chant, that song, that poem multiple times. This builds fluency over time as they begin to recognize the words that they see. But it does so in a low affective filter environment. There's not a lot of risk as they're reading that song or that poem together. Fluency is best practiced through decodable text. What does that mean? Well, decodable text is text that the student can read, where they can decode the words. Now, to be fair, some of the words that we're teaching within a unit of study may not yet be decodable to our students. We may not have taught them the sound spelling patterns that arise in some of the vocabulary words, for example. But because we often use the say it with me and read it with me strategy, we're introducing those words to students. Those words then become temporary sight words. They may not be able to decode the word just yet, but they begin to recognize those words as we provided them the opportunity to practice them orally with us. As they repeatedly read those words in the context of a song or a poem or a chant, they're building their fluency of reading those words that are new to them. The next strategy we can use is a continuation of reading a poem, a song, or a chant whole group. Now we can have students utilize their poetry booklet to engage in ear-to-ear reading. In this strategy, students are working together to read through those poems that we've been practicing whole group. Students can take turns reading chunks of the poem. For example, you might have one student read one line and the next student read the next line. They go back and forth as they read together, listen to each other, and follow along in the text. You might have the students chunk the text a little bit more. For example, one student reads one stanza, and the next student reads the next stanza. In either case, they're practicing repeated reading of text. They're looking through the text, practicing reading together, over and over again. In this way, students build their fluency. It becomes easier to read that text. They're reading it more accurately. They begin to read it a little more quickly at a more natural pace. After they've engaged in partner reading, students can then take that poetry booklet and read those poems and songs individually. In this way, they continue practice building their fluency. The third way to build fluency in the classroom is to provide access to instructional texts. There are lots of texts that we utilize with students within a GLAD unit. For example, there's the Big Book text. Students have practiced chorally reading the beginning and ending of each page with you and as a class. You've read aloud the other portions of the text. We can provide copies of that text to students to practice building reading fluency as well. If they come across words that they don't know, we can help them with those words. In other words, make those words as temporary sight words where we tell them what they are until they build the skills of decoding that particular word. As students continue to practice reading this text, they're building familiarity and ultimately building fluency with that text. It's not just the Big Book either. We might also have students practice with the expert group text that they have been reading. Similarly, they can engage in ear-to-ear reading with the expert group text, with the Big Book text, or other texts they've been practicing reading throughout the unit. They can then move to reading those texts repeatedly, individually. In each case, the more often that students practice reading those texts, the more fluent readers they will become. The key here is to provide opportunities for students to read the same text multiple times. This way they're practicing over and over again. Now, we can provide different rationale each time they're going to read it. When they're engaging with the text whole group, we have one purpose. Later, when they're practicing with a partner in ear-to-ear reading, it's a little different purpose of practicing with someone else. We can make it kind of fun, as mentioned, by chunking the text out, line by line, stanza by stanza, paragraph by paragraph, etc. In each case, it's important for students to access the same text multiple times to build their fluency. Reading a text chorally is engaging for students. We know that they're reading because their mouths are moving, words are coming out of their mouths. However, when we read chorally, comprehension is diminished. We're focused on saying the words rather than really thinking about what those words say. When we engage students in choral reading, we should also have them reread the text. You can have them read it beforehand silently to themselves before we read chorally, or you can chorally read and then have the students read silently. In that way, either before or after, students are thinking about the meaning of the text. What does it say? Before or after they engage in that choral read. Choral reading is an effective strategy to build fluency with students, but we should also link it with comprehension and make sure that students are also reading for meaning. Remember, fluency is one of the big 5 components of reading instruction: phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. As we build in opportunities for students to practice and build fluency, we'll help them to become stronger readers.